We were literally like a week out from launching the biggest, craziest innovation disruption to this category called Hum Kombucha Zero, which is a zero sugar, plant-based, shelf-stable, live and raw, real kombucha. Totally unprecedented, not on the market yet. We were just about to launch it. Trade shows coming up. We've got all the sweatshirts. We got all, oh, it's going to be amazing. And then 2 days before the trade show got closed down. And then that's okay, because we have like all these retailers across the country that said, yes, they're so excited about the product. And then the emails started coming in of, yeah, we kind of need toilet paper more than we need kombucha. So we really like your product, but no new products right now. So you're basically on hold. So all but one retailer in the country all put us on hold. Okay, so now you have this new innovation. You're betting the farm on it, kinda. So you look at what's happening. Consumers are going online. So you go to Amazon, and we were going to launch Amazon, but not till May or June, and just with zero. But instead, in 10 days, we were able to launch Amazon with our cans. And we need some help. We need people. Deschutes, turns out that they have some breweries. They had to let go of some people. So it was a quick phone call over there to say, hey, we have 15 positions. And within a 5-day period of time, those 15 people that had lost their jobs now had new jobs. There's always a silver lining, and we could be sitting here going, man, oh my God, I can't believe it. All this stuff is so bad. We have this product, we have nothing to do with it. Or we can flip it around and go, how do we leverage? How do we look at what's happening now at our new reality? This crazy pandemic, I think, has changed all of us in a lot of different ways. I think that one of the ways for Hum that it's really shown us how we, show up in a way. We have a core value of optimism. It's seeing the endless possibility of goodness that exists in all the world. And my gosh, all the stuff in diversity is happening right now. To have that optimism and to be able to look at it and go, we got this, like we got this, is a game changer.
My name is Zoe No. I am the operations manager at Personalized Nutrients. We are a supplement manufacturing company. We allow our customers the freedom to formulate and create supplements. We're based in Sisters, Oregon. We have about 40 employees, and we started here in Sisters in 2015. Something that has changed is we've gotten a lot more sales recently for immunity formulas, and we're really happy to be able to provide that to our clients. Something that has stayed the same is that we were all wearing protective gear before this, so that's the same story for us during this time. Because of all of our new sales, we've had to bring on a lot of new employees. We've hired 7 temps from Pride staff, brought on 2 temps that have a normal job, and we have hired 7 new full-time employees during this time to help us get through all of our orders. We also have increased our hours. We had mandatory overtime, and we're still running overtime every Friday for our employees. Laird Superfood is our neighbor here in Sisters, and they're in the same boat as us. They have a lot more sales, and they're hiring on a lot of people, more temps. So we've been able to work together and recommend temps to them to get hired on full-time over at their establishment. We've even had people that we've hired had their spouses apply at Laird, and we were able to recommend them. So it's been great to get families employed during this really hard time. One way Personalized Nutrients is supporting the local community is with our mandatory overtimes. We've been providing lunches and dinners for our employees, which they of course love, but we're able to support our local restaurants, which has been really impactful. A lot of the employees that are in the restaurants, they're coming out to our cars when we do curbside pickup and thanking us and just talking about how we're saving them, and it's really great to support the local community like that in this time.
My name is Abe Shahade. I'm the CEO of Blackstrap Industries. We've been doing this since, well, not this particularly, but we've been building face masks for the ski and snowboard market since 2008. So originally with Blackstrap, we were making face masks, and this pandemic hit. And at first, as a company, we were trying to just figure out how to hang on, keep our employees working and see what we can do. Once the CDC decided to release a statement to say any face covering would do, we decided that we could help, and we could help in a big way. So within 5 days, we were able to pivot as a company. We've seen a lot of customers that were on our radar or in our foresight that we were going to sell to in the future have now come to the table. Right now, we're shipping about 10,000 to 20,000 units per day, and we don't see a slowdown in sight. With that, we were able to keep our employees working. In fact, we're hiring more employees. Our factory employment rate is up 60%. As a company, we have a zero waste initiative. And originally we were building goggle covers from our waste as a way to not put our fabrics in the landfill. So it was actually very simple for us to pivot that. As of right now, in just the last week, we've saved over 90,000 pounds of fabric from a landfill. And we are turning those scraps into these civilian masks. So it's a win-win, right? It's a non-disposable product, so we're not polluting the environment. It's washable. It's all of our same antimicrobial fabrics that we use in the ski snow world. And we're able to save the planet while helping people at the same time. So we feel really good about that. The big thing for us was to be able to donate to charities, to the front line, to caregivers. And so right now, if you go to bsbrand.com, you'll see that it's a one-for-one program. So if you buy one, we donate one. This week alone, we're slated to do about 10,000 units in donations. The only way we're really going to flatten the curve is, people have to stay home. So I urge all of you to stay home. Don't come outside if you don't have to. I have a pregnant wife at home that I'm doing some of this stuff to make sure that I can keep our employees employed, but also provide things that are needed to keep people safe. But really the way we're gonna flatten this curve and do what we need to do is we need to stay home. So stay home. If you have to go out, wear a face mask.
Good evening, EDCO Pub Talk. We are virtual tonight. I'm Shannon Kelly, and I am your host. I'm so happy to have you all here tonight. I wish we were in person, but this will have to do. We have a great program for you, and thank you so much for tuning in. Rumor has it that McMenamins will be back open for takeout tomorrow. So unfortunately, we couldn't get any tots for tonight, but it's really good to see some movement over with our friends at McMenamins. So please make sure you go over and support those guys when you can. Pub Talk tonight is possible because of our sponsors. They're offering this virtual event free of charge in support of our entrepreneurs here in Central Oregon and the broader business community, and we are so grateful. So if you're as happy that I'm here, that I am, then you have IPDM and CS Construction, who have together created a one-stop shop for design and construction projects of all types. As I mentioned last month, this is not a time to DIY your office remodel. So if you've gotten yourself into a sticky situation, give those folks a call and get back on track. Now, I'd really love to take a moment to highlight each of our title sponsors that make tonight possible. And we will start with Randy Vance from Directors Mortgage. Randy, what do you have for us tonight?
Hey folks out there in Zoom land, Randy Vance here with Directors Mortgage. Quick update, rates are still fantastically low. From the real estate agents that I've been talking with, the inventory is fairly low with the shelter in place order. Not a ton of new inventory coming on the market available, and what is on there isn't lasting long. So while everyone out there is doom and gloom talking about global recession and possibly even a depression, it looks that here in our little community in Central Oregon, we're somewhat insulated from everything. I will say this, I really look forward to having these things at McMenamins again, seeing all of your wonderfully smiling faces and being able to support our community and continue our charitable giving. So thanks so much for me. Thanks. I think that about wraps up my minute. Randy Vance with Directors Mortgage, Vend at directorsmortgage.net. or 541-385-6112. If you haven't refinanced yet, give me a call.
Hey everybody, Jordan Smith from V-Lock Systems here. Welcome to Pub Talk. A huge thank you to EDCO and our other sponsors for making Pub Talk a virtual reality. See what I did there? I just want to remind you guys, invest a lot of time, energy, and money into your business. And at the center of most businesses is technology that helps you plan, sell, produce, track everything in your business. If you're currently having that handled by an IT guy, he just kind of fixes what's broken until it breaks again. You got to ask yourself if he really has the skill and talent to give you guys business solutions you need, rather than just costing you a lot of money. So you have a CFO, you have a CEO, you have an operations director, a VP of sales, and these leaders are making valuable decisions around the table. You really need to have a CIO, a chief information officer there as well, that's interested in the overall success of your business. So BLOX Systems, that's what we do. We have a team of kind of virtual CIOs that come into your business, sit down with you, look over your financial goals and operational goals, and we work to understand everything about your business so that we can help you guys with technology to make your businesses perform better. In the very first call, we're going to ask you what your production needs are, what your financial parameters are. We're going to look through what your costs are and get those down as much as we can. And we're going to design a tailor-made roadmap based on your business so that you know every dollar you spend on your technology will have a return on investment that we can predict and calculate and rely on. So, hey, call us today at BLOX Systems to help your business make more money. And right now, I'm going to turn it back to Shannon, and we'll have a great evening.
Thanks, Jordan. I love to see that quarantine beard coming in. Well done. All right, next up is Kurt Barker from Carnot Peterson. Kurt, how are you?
Hi, everybody. Kurt Barker here. There's about 35 souls at Carnot Peterson between our lawyers and our staff. I know all of us feel extremely lucky to be able to continue working remotely and helping our clients right now. For me, that's been week after week of layoffs and terminations, sad stuff. Even our estate planning lawyers, they're busy helping people, an unprecedented number of people who are worried they're going to pass away soon. So we're still thankful to be working. Glad we can be here for you. Our hearts go out to all of you who've been impacted so much by this crisis. We're here for you. We're in this together. And thanks to EDCO for keeping it that way.
Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate that sentiment so much. All right, I want to say last but certainly not least, a special shout out to our banker friends over at Columbia Bank who have had a long few weeks supporting our business community with continuously changing and evolving resources. Corey Allen, we know that you just had a big birthday, so happy birthday, and we'll be sure to celebrate you when we are all back together again. Up next is EDCO CEO, Roger Lee. Roger, I hear we have yet another new face on Team EDCO. Such great timing for some good news. Why don't you give us the update?
Thanks, Shannon, and welcome back to Pub Talk Online. I'd like to start by providing a sincere thank you to Eric Strobel and Kat Gardner from BBSI for their expert work to find the newest member of our team, EDCO Bend Area Director Don Mill. Don brings great C-level and financial and business leadership experience to the role, which we think is perfect timing given the current situation. Like our local directors across the region, he's been busy in his first weeks on the job, reaching out to more than 70 companies to discuss how current economic situation is impacting them and ways we can help. Speaking of the economy, it appears that at least a framework is being developed at the state to return people back to work and our lives to some degree of normalcy. Details are still emerging, but EDCO is pushing forward with our local government partners to connect them to business owners to provide their perspectives on a restart effort. And not to be confused with startup, which is the normal focus of our monthly Pub Talk series. Time will tell how this will all roll out, but suffice to say that we expect rural counties, Kirk and Jefferson in our region, to actually have a current easing of restrictions first. That will no doubt be phased in a tiered approach, but at least some sort of pace will be in the hands of local residents and our local public leaders. Now more than ever, it's easy to find bad news, so I thought I'd share some good news with you. Smart Asset, which does a lot of research around the economy and around businesses, recently produced a ranking for Oregon counties based upon IRS tax returns and found that Deschutes County has the highest percentage of all business income being generated by small businesses, just over 14%. It also had the third highest percentage of all returns filed by small businesses. Let's hope together so we can help keep as many of those small businesses in operation post-COVID-19 restrictions. This is a perfect opportunity to recognize the outstanding work of our partners in the community and the region who have been in the trenches from triage to stabilization. Those partners include local chambers of commerce, the Small Business Development Center at COCC, Opportunity Knox, and local cities and counties, as well as Business Oregon. They've just done an amazing job, and they've been great communicators in this effort to help prop up local businesses and keep them in business. So thanks again for making Pub Talk and this monthly celebration of local entrepreneurship part of your day. Shannon, back to you.
Thanks, Roger. That is a great update. I look forward to hearing more about our restart efforts, and it sure is great to see an affirmation of how well our business community functions. I also have to say, under normal in-person circumstances, Roger doesn't ever have access to infographics, so that was a lot of fun. Thanks, Roger. All right, if you're joining us in Central Oregon, I would love to remind you that you are sitting or standing on ceded land. This is land that was ceded to the U.S. government by the Confederated Warm Springs tribes, including the Paiute and Wasco people as well. If you'd like to follow along with what some of the people from those tribes are doing, you can follow on Instagram and Facebook the Warm Springs artists. They have awesome initiatives going, and you won't regret being a part of it. So go ahead and find out more of that. Also want to give you all a heads up that we are using our chat bar tonight for questions. So if you have questions for our speakers, for our panelists, there's two ways that you can communicate your questions to us. The first way is to ask in the YouTube chat sidebar, which should be right on the right side of your video. The second, you do also need to be logged into a Google account in order for this to work. The second option is to email your question directly to our team. And the email address is events@edcoinfo.com, and we'll take care of the rest. So make sure that you interact with us. Give us your feedback, give us your questions. We love to have your energy as a part of this program. So on to tonight's early stage companies. We're gonna go with Food First. And since they last pitched, Food for the Soul has been recognized in major publications like Outside Online and Backpacker Magazine, reaching millions and translating to e-commerce sales. And while they feel the deep impact the coronavirus has played on the community, they are thankful to be one of the companies that are able to stay open, keep people employed, and they've actually seen an uptick in sales as a result of the pandemic. Let's hear what mother and son co-founder team Julie and Henry Mosier have to say about their products. Julie and Henry, are you there?
Yeah. Oh, looks like Julie has to unmute really quick.
Julie, if you could unmute.
There we go.
There she is.
All right. Hi.
Okay. Take it away, guys.
Hey, hello. Thanks for having us back. A lot has changed for us over the last year, and obviously a lot has changed for everybody in the last few months. But amazingly, through this pandemic, we have found ourselves to be in the rare position of growth without having to change our business model. Our meals are now widely being purchased with the intention of stocking pantries and building emergency kits, which expands our market into the world of convenience-based health food. While our primary vertical market remains the outdoor adventure consumer, we are happily starting to see an expansion into home, office, and travel use. Now, as with many things, we've learned to see our progress through the frame set of a rose and its thorns.
Right. So as Shannon mentioned, we've gotten some great exposure in the last year. In January, we learned that we'd been selected to be listed in Backpacker Magazine's Spring Gear Guide of 2020. Backpacker Magazine has a combined outreach of 2.2 million people between print and digital editions. So needless to say, we were pretty excited and began production immediately. That ramp in production turned out to be pretty beneficial for us as it coincided with the COVID crisis. Our sales shifted from an outdoor focus into a pantry stocking focus, and we've been able to supply people with health-oriented food along this, unprecedented time. Additionally, Outside Online has made mention of us twice in the last couple of years, one of which being a most recent article about the best cookbooks in the last year, featured Julie's Dehydrator Cookbook for the Outdoor Adventure. Somehow, amidst starting a business, she still found time to write a cookbook, so props to her. We're doing. Last year, we were selling through two different distribution channels, one of which was e-commerce and events to selling direct to consumer, and the other one was business to business. And last fall, we decided to bring on two more channels to cast a wider net, one of which was an FBA account to manage and advertise through Amazon, and the other one was a pro deal aggregate that has about over 150 brands selling discounts of outdoor products to industry professionals with a reach of 1.2 million subscribers. This channel serves largely as a marketing tactic for us. The industry pros get discounted product. They use it in the field. We get the benefit of word of mouth. And in addition, we also get data and analytics that will help guide our growth strategy across the country. All said and done, in 2019, we saw 250% increase in sales over the first year, and trends show that that is going to continue, if not increase.
As to the thorns, well, the space we cook in currently is both too small for our needs and it's a shared space. So customization to increase flow and efficiency just isn't possible. This is really starting to restrict our ability to grow and maintain an efficient process. Not only does that inhibit our growth and cause further, challenges for us, we don't have the ability to store much equipment beyond our dehydrators at this space. So we haven't been able to implement some of the labor-saving tools that we would like to add. That would help us not only in the cooking, but both in the packaging phases of our production. We've done a pretty good job of reducing the cost of ingredients as we gain the ability to buy in larger quantities, but packaging is still a challenge for us. In addition to the equipment mentioned, we need to implement a custom printed bag solution to be able to increase our margins to a point that we're happy with. And we have a current 17 SKUs, so that's a pretty big initial investment. Then lastly, we're having some supply chain issues, no surprise there, everybody is, but we've worked to diversify that with our vendors and added vendors, but it's a situation that's changing constantly. So we are really prioritizing monitoring that situation and finding solutions.
So ultimately, the big question is, what are our next steps for growth? Well, we had plans to move into a new kitchen facility with another business. However, the development of that facility ended up being smaller than we originally anticipated and would have curbed our ability to grow. Now we are actively seeking a new space to incorporate cooking, packaging, warehousing, shipping, receiving, offices, you name it, all under one roof. We're looking for about 1,800 to 2,500 square feet. Ideally, this space would already be outfitted with a hood and a drain, as the cost associated with those features is rather high for installation. And better yet, this would be a space in a warehouse district, as we don't need a storefront and the rent associated with that. Once we have a larger space to operate in, we can cut our costs and maintain a sustainable business model as we grow. And because we're moving into our own space, we are also in the market for equipment to aid in production efficiency. We know we're speaking to a very knowledgeable and connected group, so any aid and assistance would be greatly appreciated. And thanks for having us on Pub Talk, guys.
That's great. I just love hearing more about your story, and I'm so glad to hear that it's going well. I first heard about your products from local business Outside In, a beautiful apparel and gear store downtown. And I just wondered, how did you all first start with this? Where was the original idea, and how did you decide to work together? Mother-son duo, it's just not the most common business duo.
Yeah, sure. Well, we've always been very close. We moved from mother-son to friends fairly early on. And then kind of throughout that friendship process of mother-son growth, we got into backpacking in a relatively close time period. In addition to backpacking, though, Julie, my mom, picked up a hobby of dehydrating. So I want to say, what was that, 2015, I decided to hike the John Muir Trail with a good friend of mine who's actually our right-hand man in the business now, and asked Julie it's so weird to call her Julie, my mom, to pick up or to create meals for us. And the trick with that was that we weren't going to be using a stove. So everything we would do was cold soak. That's a fairly commonplace to a certain degree and an ultralight through hiker mentality, but not necessarily a common practice within the food industry. So my mother, with this newly found hobby and skill set, I don't know, she crushed it. She really did. One of some of the first meals that she came up with, the triple peanut slaw, one of the first meals she came up with, it was the meal that got featured in the Spring Gear Guide. So right off the bat, we knew we had something really, really impressive. We watched the market for a few years and supplied a few more friends along the way. And before we knew it, the push to start was, I don't know, it's just too strong to ignore. So here we are.
That's awesome. So I have a question from our live audience, and they want to know if you have had a chance to connect yet with OMEP for production efficiency.
No, we have not.
Cool.
So-
Well, that might be a good lead for you guys to head out towards.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how many people on your team right now?
There, including Henry and myself, there are 8 of us. And that is, Henry mentioned Mark. He is definitely our right-hand guy. He does all of our order fulfillment, warehouse, purchasing, and so forth. And then we actually have a lot of part-time people in the kitchen with us. So people who are in different situations, and especially in the last few months, it's been a bit fluid, as you might imagine. But we have been blessed with an amazing team from the start.
And where do you all find inspiration for your meals? I know they're quite creative and varied. So tell me more about that process.
Gosh, Henry's laughing. I'm always thinking about food. It's just the nature of me. And I grew up in a foodie family. I married into a foodie family. So I am always looking for ways to push the envelope. Things that you wouldn't think could be dehydrated. So I spend a lot of time in my own kitchen just kind of exploring and absolutely, playing around. There's a dehydrator on my kitchen counter at all times. And I'm always looking for ways to push lots of veggies and texture and so forth into the backcountry.
That's awesome. I love that. So what is the most popular product since COVID-19 hit?
That's really interesting. We actually implemented a 5-day food kit in response to, the amount that people were purchasing, and that's become very popular. But as the warm weather comes on, we shift to seeing more of our cold soak salads being sold. So it is kind of a seasonal, once it's 100 degrees outside or 90 degrees outside, whether you're outside or in the forest or what have you, the cold soak salads have become really popular.
That makes sense. And so how are you marketing your product?
Well, it's largely organic at this point. We've done an amazing job of, well, it's kind of one of those if you build it, they will come sort of situations. The word of mouth presence has been really strong for us. We've been super, super fortunate to partner with some businesses along the way that have helped boost our subscriber range through newsletters and through Instagram. And then, like I mentioned, that Pro Deal aggregate, the reach there is really, really impressive. Let's shift industries and say ski goggles for a second. You see all the outdoor pros wearing the same set of ski goggles because they get it at a good discounted price. You start to think as a general public consumer, wow, those must be good goggles. The same sort of effect happens with our food. The more professionals that buy our food, the more general public sees it, and it plays a really strong impact on speaking to the quality of our product.
Yeah, I'll say it does. Well, it's really quite impressive. It's lovely to watch, and I just look forward to seeing you all continue to grow. And I love that you're seeing something really positive come out of this uncertain time. So good for you guys and good for us. And thank you so much for being here, Julie and Henry. We really appreciate you. Best of luck to you. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Julie and Henry, I mean, if that doesn't give you a little bit of inspiration, I don't know what will. So while we gear up for our next pitch, I'd like to quickly call out some of our newest members. EDCO, our lovely Heidi has been out there connecting with new EDCO supporters and everything going on and widening our team and our network. So in alphabetical order, here are all of our new members: Credit Associates, Denise Bestwick, Hardworks Paint, Indigo Marketing, Keen Development, Collective, Live Bend Real Estate, Beth Davies, hi Beth, Yellowknife Wireless LLC, and an upgraded member, Sherpa Wealth Services. Thank you to each of you for making this important work at EDCO possible. I just love to see how strong our business community is here. So next up is our next segment is provided to us by supporting sponsors COCC Small Business Development Center. They are still open to help our local small businesses, especially during these challenging times. Business advisors are keeping abreast of the daily developments during COVID-19. And if you have questions, please reach out to COCC Small Business Development Center. And also SGA CPAs. If you are looking for an account with great client service and technology, call SGA CPAs for the best online accounting experience in the business. So now we're going to hear from the founder of Puffin Coolers, Tyrone Hazen. Puffin Coolers launched with a single product, a bottle cooler that emulates a mummy-style sleeping bag. The inspiration for this product was simply the realization that Bend is best known for two things, beer and the outdoors. Since their inception, they've added 4 additional styles of beverage coolers and have 3 more products in development for release this summer. Tyrone, take it away. Tell us tell us just all about it. We can't wait to hear more.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, Shannon. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. And I'm here representing a company called Puffin Coolers. And if you haven't seen them and are curious what a puffin is, it's these guys. So as Shannon mentioned, we started with the sleeping bag style version, and then we realized we needed something for cans. So we went with the little jacket. And we have found that we solve the problem for the clever gift. Generally what happens, we'll see somebody take a look at these and they'll go, oh man, that's so cute. My uncle, cousin, sister-in-law, fill in the blank, would love this. And we see that quite often. In fact, we went to the America's Mart in Atlanta in January of this year, which is the world's largest gift trade show. And we won first place for People's Choice. So that was a really great way for us to kick off the year. And obviously we fit pretty well in gift, we think. And that's great because gift is big. Here in the United States alone, we spend over $1 trillion gifting every year. Now, obviously some of those gifts are skis, TVs, cars, plane tickets, things like that. But there is an actual gifting market. And that market here in the US is $131 billion. And in addition to fitting in gift, we also feel like we fit pretty well in outdoor and grocery and beer and wine and collegiate, add specialty and corporate gifts. That alone is a $22 billion industry. And so far we've had some luck. Traction-wise, so we started with a little test here in the local community by consigning at some of the local stores here in town for a holiday of 2018. And we had a lot of success there, and we realized, all right, we've got something, let's go with it. So we brought on another founder and had her learn and then infiltrate the gift rep groups. And if you're not familiar with what a gift rep is, or a rep in general, it's just a third-party regional sales team. They all rep the same lines and they have their accounts. So we started with a group out of Seattle, and they represent just 5% of the US population as far as their territory. And they were able to net us $250,000 in sales in their first 10 months, with just 5% of the nation. Since then, we've tried to scale up, and we have just recently contracted with 2 additional rep groups that each are 10 times the size of that first rep group. So we now actually have rep coverage over the entire United States, all 50 states. And in addition to gift reps, we have independent reps in the outdoor industry as well. We've also been really lucky to partner with some really notable brands. Last year, we worked with Eddie Bauer, Duluth Trading, Sportsman's Warehouse, the national parks. So that was really fun. And then currently we're in discussion with REI, the Container Store, the Paper Store, West Marine. So we've got some really fun collaborations coming up. And obviously you've heard of koozies before, and there is some competition in the market. There's the cheap giveaway kind of neoprenes that, maybe you pay a couple bucks for, but generally they're just giveaways. There's a company called Brewmate that makes a water bottle style koozie thing that holds like a 12-ounce bottle. They do a lot of direct-to-consumer sales, and just to give you an idea of size here, they do 15 million in direct-to-consumer sales, and their products range from $20 to $35. Then they're the big guys, Stanley and Hydro Flask. They have the double-walled metal can bottle insulators, and obviously we know those guys all do pretty well. And so while there are companies out there offering functionally competitive products in the marketplace, we intend to leverage kind of the creative form factor and sell premium koozies. And our products range currently from about $12 to $16 MSRP. Revenue generation, we have about 3 different streams that we focus on. Obviously, I mentioned the rep groups. Those guys help us get into the retailers. Then we have direct to consumer sales, which is currently just through our website, which if you're taking notes is puffincoolers.com. Check us out if you've got gifts to give soon. And then third would be our customization and collaborations with brands, and we're looking to expand on those customization options. We have quite a few competitive advantages, we feel, as well. We do have a utility patent filed with the USPTO. We have already got a registered trademark. Fulfillment, we actually have in-house. We have a fulfillment center down in Utah that is just under our control, and we're looking at moving customization in-house as well. So we've kind of got some vertical integration already taking place. And then we also have some fantastic factory partners and just people here in the community to help us with our overseas transactions and making sure that we're being taken care of there. So as Shannon mentioned, we've got some future products coming up we're really excited about. The ethos here at Puffin Coolers and also our marketing tagline is fun together. And we really think we've nailed it with some of these products we've got coming up. This is the first unveiling, but check this guy out. This is our adventure vest. And you can see it's like a little fly fishing vest. So we think those are going to do really well. And then we got these guys coming up. They're mini vintage life jackets, super fun. They work with cans and bottles. Later this year, we also have some holiday stuff coming out. We've got holiday sweaters and some wine bottle carriers that we hope to have in the market. And then moving forward beyond that, we've got a picnic pack we're working on and a lunch pouch, things that have a little more utility and leverage a little bit less the novelty side of things. And then we actually have a big picture as well. We recently partnered with an organization known as Big City Mountaineers, and we think these guys are really great. They help introduce disadvantaged youth to the outdoors through sponsored camping trips and outdoor excursions. And so we're working with them to kind of get them more exposure. We'll probably have them on some of our packaging soon here. We're a small team, a small executive team right now. It's just myself and my 2 partners, Byron and Christina Linton. They are brother and sister. My focus is on the finance side of things. Byron handles operations and oversees our marketing efforts, and Christina is our stellar brand manager. As far as how you folks could help us out, we are obviously looking for additional connections that, organizations that might be interested in working with us as a co-branding type of thing or some customization. Obviously, there's a lot of beer in this town, and we have yet to really go knocking on those doors. So send people our way. We're also planning to bring somebody in-house as a dedicated in-house designer for both product and graphic work. So if you've got somebody that's looking for something along those lines or might be a good fit for us, send them our way. And then also IP strategy. Our advisors keep hounding us to make sure that we're staying on top of IP. So anybody that could help us with a long-term plan for putting something like that together would be really helpful. And then I guess just like one final ask, go out and have fun together. Just keep it 6 feet apart for now. Thank you.
That's awesome, Tyrone. I just love it. I have to say, when I see your product, I'm kind of a sucker for anything tiny. So when I see your product, I think like that, they must be having a lot of fun at work if that's what they are getting to make. So, but it's not just cute. Talk to me about the durability of the product.
Yeah, so currently all of our products are made out of nylon. So this is a D30 high grade nylon, and there's a batting inside, and then you can see here, sorry, I'm not used to doing this on my screen. We've got the insulated liner inside. To date, we've sold over 50,000 units. I think we've had 1 returned, so pretty good.
Yeah, I'll say that's great. I mean, the fishing vest is just too cute. So has the gift industry, can you speak to how it's been affected since COVID hit?
Oh yeah, everything is shut down. It's been really interesting for us. We feel like we're pretty lucky. We're in a position where we can actually take advantage of some of the downtime because our growth has been something that's been difficult for us as a small organization to kind of keep up with. But all of our retailers are pretty much closed down. We're definitely a buy this when you see it impulse type of purchase. And so, in fact, very early on, while we were testing here in town at some of our local retailers, we were also doing some online stuff. And traction is much easier to get in person. It's one of those things that, maybe somebody isn't searching for it, but when you see it, people loved it. So with the stores being shut down, that has slowed things down for us and obviously for them. We did make an attempt very early on, as soon as the COVID shut things down. we entered a retail relief partnership with a couple of other really large national brands. And the effort there was to have the individual retailers out marketing, on their Instagram and to their social feeds to make purchases through our store and the other partners' stores, and then we would kick back to them a percentage so that they would still get some retail income. And that had some mild success. I think that the timing was a bit tough because everybody personally also just clamped down on their purse strings, and for the first couple of weeks, no one was buying. It sounds like that trend is starting to change online. So hopefully, the retail division of our country will open up shortly again here, and everybody will get back on track.
Well, I know a lot of people are really missing their ability to go shopping, so I hope so too. So how seasonal are your sales for these little gift items?
Yeah, we actually don't have a whole lot of historical information on that yet. Obviously, holiday is a really great opportunity for us, and that starts as early as late September, early October, and runs through. But these guys are going to be a summer type thing, and then there are holidays throughout the year. People are always gifting. There's always somebody's birthday, or it's Father's Day, or it's Mother's Day, or it's Valentine's Day. So people think of gift as being only holiday, but we see that we'll definitely get it, if not 2 humps, maybe more, in our seasonality, both summertime when everybody's outside drinking beer and needs to keep it cold and camping, and then again, holidays for gifting.
That's awesome. And I would imagine that would definitely be true for you. So can you talk about where the products are sourced and how they're created, and where you're getting your materials from?
Yeah, so all of that is handled overseas. So all the products that we've got out in the marketplace right now are manufactured over one of our partners in China. And we actually have a great liaison on the ground over there, and they've been able to assist us because early on, like I said, as we're small and still learning this stuff, we don't know that market, and they do. And so we've been really lucky to have partners on board that can assist us with all those things, both overseas and the local community here. Kind of side note, I moved here 6 years ago specifically because of the entrepreneurial support that we get here. I actually was bouncing around on EDCO's website 6-7 years ago and was like, oh man, these guys actually have a plan for helping things out. And so here it is, and I can't imagine more support or having access to people that know this stuff better anywhere else in the world. So huge plug for Bend and EDCO. But back to your question, yeah, we've got a great team that helps us with all those things as well.
That's awesome. So, okay, I have one last question. Does the vest float your beverage?
It does. We had them test it before it was even shipped over this way. Yeah, so it'll float, and you might get a little water in there, but hopefully you're in local waters and it's nice, crisp, and clean.
That's great. Okay, so I have a request. Can you set one of the fishing vests aside for Aaron Riley?
When we get them, it's a ways out. I'll keep you posted, Aaron.
Okay, just please put a little Post-it note on your there. Don't forget. All right, Tyrone, it's just awesome to hear from you. This is such a fun idea, and I love to see the products, and I love to see what you're expanding into. So I wish you the best of luck. I appreciate you being here. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right, now for it's very clever, Tyrone. I love it. I love that you pursued that. So now for another quick early stage company update. This one is sponsored by Central Oregon Association of Realtors, COAR. They are tracking market activity by the week. So please visit them on Facebook and Twitter every Monday for up-to-date information on the Central Oregon housing market, which is changing just about every day. Also, Barrett Business Services, Inc., or BBSI, who reminds us there's no better time to live in Central Oregon and to be thankful for this place. It's our people and our spirit of cooperation. And Eric looks forward very much to seeing the Pub Talk crowd again soon. So thanks, Eric. Thanks, BBSI. I appreciate that kind message. So Terra Firma was born for stuff like this. It offers preparedness steps for disasters that are similar to steps taken before social distancing in the event of a pandemic. These steps double as preparedness for events like earthquakes and winter storms. Terra Firma's products include everything you need to prepare physically, intellectually, and emotionally for any disaster that may occur. Here for an update on their offering is founder and CEO Allison Barnard. Allison, how are you tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to have you here.
Good. I'm really glad to be here too. I have a lot to say in a short amount of time, but it's great news. We want to recreate a little bit of magic that happened for us last month. Last fall, I want to say, I sent a grab and go box to Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard. When COVID-19 hit, I noticed her posting on Instagram and I could tell that she was getting worried. So I sent her a message reminding her that she had a grab and go box in her house. And I told her specifically to go and read the Be Well action plan that is in her box and to read it, especially if her kids were feeling scared. An hour later, just before 6 p.m., right as Western states were issuing stay-at-home orders, I was sitting down to dinner with my 6-year-old and my phone started to go cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And I looked at the Shopify app on my phone and saw that we had sales coming in and insane traffic numbers. Orders were coming in every minute. I literally leapt out of my chair and started pacing all over my house. I had a feeling it was something Kristen had done, so I jumped on Instagram and I found that she had added a story recommending us for if people were feeling nervous, and they were. The next 24 hours were a complete blur. Charles, my director of operations, came over to my house and we were packaging and shipping from my dining room table. My husband was out of town at the time, so my parents had to FaceTime with my daughter for 5 hours the next day just so that we could keep up. At the same time, our disaster decks, which we sell on our website, but also on Amazon, they were selling really fast, and we were going to run out of all of our inventory there in 48 hours. So we needed to manufacture and replenish right away. So we jumped on that. I got in touch with my advisors to update them and ask them to be on standby in case I needed some fast feedback. We were also in the middle of working on some special edition disaster decks to release on Amazon and our website. I have some of them here. They're for wildfire and earthquake, power outage and tornado. So we decided to really push to get these done and completed so we could push them to Amazon. When Kristen's Instagram story expired 24 hours after she'd posted it, sales completely stopped and we were oddly relieved. It was day 2 at that point of staying at home, and we were still wrapping our minds around how we were going to do that and run a business. Plus, we had gained nearly 7,000 new followers, most of which were our target market as far as we could tell. And they're typically incredibly expensive to market to. So we needed to get busy engaging them with stories and Q&As to support them as the emotional realities we knew would set in about COVID-19 and stay-at-home orders started to show up. This type of relationship mattered to us because it helps us show our values as a company. As of today, we've retained 96% of those new followers, and we believe many are primed to become customers. We've replenished all disaster decks on Amazon, and we're rolling out these new special edition decks next week. And we have a plan to hopefully recreate the moment that we had with Kristen. We are sending out 75 grab and go boxes to celebrities who are on a mission to help communities and people. We plan to manufacture a small batch of boxes at a cost of $12,000 to have on hand in case we can recreate that moment with other influencers and can react quickly. We luckily have a very fast 2-week manufacturing turnaround for every item inside the box because we chose long ago to manufacture in the US exclusively. So I'll be looking for financing for this in order to keep our on-hand cash directed toward continuing to restock our Amazon inventory. Our intention right now is simply to continue to promote the grab and go box while folks are at home. In the throes of a disaster or a pandemic, resilience is about gear and supplies, but we all suddenly understand firsthand that it's also about tools for staying emotionally balanced and helping our families learn how to be more resilient. And that, as a disaster company, is what makes us completely different. We believe in supporting people holistically, and we're ready to communicate this to people while they are at home right now. So we're excited to see what comes next.
Wow, Allison, I just love this story. This is amazing and such a cool opportunity. How did you know to reach out to Kristen? It just a hunch, or you knew she would be a good candidate, or?
Well, it was for a couple of reasons. The first one is that I had been following her on Instagram, and when things for her feel like there's an opportunity for her to create outreach that will help people, she jumps on it. She doesn't hesitate. She really uses her social media platforms to help people. And I listen to her husband's podcast all the time, and he talks a lot about psychoanalytical issues in the same way that I think about them. And it really, between the two of them, it made sense to me that they'd open the product and they'd absolutely get it and maybe one day do something with that. I was really just reaching out to help her in that moment, and it sort of turned into this kind of magical moment for the brand.
I know I already said it, but I love it so much, but I think it really does speak to like what is really at play here, which is you did this thing genuinely, and then you received this response that you couldn't have even possibly imagined on your own. You couldn't have orchestrated it on your own, which is just so encouraging and so cool. So tell us a little bit more about how you came to start creating these packs and what people can expect when they order one.
Well, initially it started just because I felt that there was this really big disconnect between disaster preparedness and emotional resilience. I was a mom at that time to a 3-year-old, and I thought, this is nuts. As a mom, my first instinct is to make sure that she's okay and to make sure that my family is emotionally okay, while we're also in the throes of being very strategic and doing a lot of analytical thinking and problem solving. I wanted to create a product that honored holistically what we all go through when we're in one of these situations, and would be there to guide us with data and facts so that we can just chip away at things. When people order a box, it's priority shipping, so they get it as fast as we can ship it. And it opens up and it guides them step by step through what they need to do. But they also become members at Terra Firma. And so they get a member email, and every single week we send them an email that kind of just gives them a little bit of a push toward getting something done in the box. The box is not about gear. It's about having products inside that help you prepare, adapt, and recover from anything that happens. So they can kind of go about it at their own pace.
It's just so cool. So I have a comment from somebody watching from home. They say, just a huge shout out and kudos for your tenacity, creativity, and super tactical approach. And that's from Mission Limelight.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear. I really appreciate that.
So what's the website for Terra Firma?
Okay. It's Terra Firma without an I. So it's TerraFrma.com. And the website will really lay out for you how it all works.
Okay, great. TerraFrma.com, terrafirma.com. Are you introducing specific COVID kits?
So we've really been thinking about that. This is a fascinating thing. The trick about this is that with a pandemic, it really depends on what the virus is. It depends on how it's infiltrating communities. The feedback that we would be giving would have to be so incredibly neutral. So we're trying to figure out how we can do that in the same way that we have with disasters like earthquakes and wildfires. But what we really are trying to be careful of is that whatever we recommend doesn't negate information that's given in a completely different type of pandemic. We want to make sure that we're keeping people safe.
Sure. And I think one thing we can all agree on is that with this specific pandemic, no one knows what's going on.
Yeah, things change really, really fast.
Yeah, it's been quite confusing. So I appreciate that. So, what's your background? How did you get into doing this? I think it's such a cool thing to be offering people. So where did it come from?
Well, I'm not a disaster expert. I am a unique combination of someone who is incredibly psychoanalytical. I kind of have my whole life obsessed over why people do what they do and why they don't do what they don't do. And I also really believe firmly that even when we are at our worst, we're doing our best. And I wanted to make sure that I could create something that would allow people to thrive in spite of trauma showing up or in spite of fight or flight kicking in. My husband is an engineer and goes to sea for a living. And so using his very analytical brain, and I'm a longtime entrepreneur. I kind of obsess over finding solutions to things in the world. So it kind of was just this mishmash of us sitting around talking about disaster preparedness and realizing there's something missing here. And it really sparked excitement in me to try and unlock that issue.
Well, I just think it's so cool, and it makes me excited for what else you're going to be doing, because this is a just remarkable effort and incredible service to be giving people. And I agree with you. Even when we're at our worst, I think we are still doing our best. So thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. All right, Allison, I just can't wait to keep following along, and I hope that you have some more Kristen Bell moments.
Yeah, me too.
We'll be here cheering you on the whole time. So have a great rest of your evening. Thank you for being here, and thank you for updating us on these.
Thank you so much for having me.
Allison, I love that she is thinking of things holistically. It's so important for us to consider everything, include everything all together when we're in these types of situations and when we're just having a normal day, right? So on to our next keynote, or our next segment, our keynote portion. This is sponsored by Qorvo, a high-tech manufacturing and design center looking for passionate, energetic, and self-driven individuals interested in manufacturing and technology. During this challenging time, Qorvo remains committed to problem solving while keeping our families and our communities safe. So check out their career opportunities at bolt.com and Qorvo.com. That's QORVO.com. And also University of Oregon. A message from your Bend-based Ducks. They hope you are healthy and safe and look forward to seeing you soon. As always, go Ducks. Thanks, University of Oregon. So have you ever thought about the role that artificial intelligence plays in your daily life? You probably have. AI is all around you, including the ads that you're served to guide the decisions that you make and how you consume. The role of AI ethics is to teach machines about human values and govern how it operates in the wild. Our keynote duo tonight, David and Helen Edwards, co-founders of Sonder Scheme, are here to tell us why privacy is different in the age of AI, how humans judge machines differently than machines judge humans, and the threats that AI poses. Take it away, David and Helen. We're glad you're here.
Thanks for having us. Again, we're Dave and Helen, co-founders of Sonder Scheme, Bend-based business. And we're on a mission to help humans win in the age of AI by making it AI design easier, more inclusive, more ethical, and more human. We have an online product called Sonder Scheme Studio, which provides people a whole system for human-centered AI design. And we run workshops for companies around the world. And very excited to be here talking with you about ethics and AI. We're going to run this keynote. We do a lot of speaking and a lot of keynotes. We're going to run this one a bit as a conversation because we're in your living room and you're at least in our home. So we'll keep it a bit friendly. So I guess I'm going to ask you to start off and just talk about why do we need ethics in AI at all?
Well, it mostly comes down to how AI is different, and that really comes right from the science of what machine learning and what AI is. So first of all, it's about data. It's about the fact that the AI learns from data, and it can learn an enormous amount on its own from that data. And that data comes from the world of human bias. And so we've got to be really careful to understand exactly how AI is interpreting that data. But it also, because it learns after design, and part of its behavior is dependent on its post-design experience with that data and with users, it matters that you're able to anticipate some of those downstream consequences. And that's new. That's new in the world of design in some ways, because with everything being much more with data, being able to capture a lot of more social aspects and human aspects, it's human behavior that actually becomes the most valuable design material. So it's not plastic or metal anymore, it's actually human behavior. And so you can't just sort of stop at well, I intended it to work like this. You actually have to go further and say, and understand what those consequences might be. So that's the first thing. The second thing about AI is that it's huge in scale and in scope. So it can, and in speed. So harm happens before people even notice it. So we have to be mindful of that and think about those things in advance. And the final reason, really, or the other big reason, is that AI is role creating. So it creates its own role, it creates a different role in users, and that changes the way that humans behave with technology, and that it matters that we think about these consequences up front, and that we don't perpetuate past prejudices, and that we're able to account for that harm and hold people accountable for any harm that comes from AI. So those are sort of the core reasons, and they really do come from the science.
I want to dig in on the privacy question. For the last 20 years since the dawn of the internet, or whatever the number of years is now, we've all been thinking about what the data is that we offer up. What do we put in a website? And what do we put in our emails? What is the information that we offer up? But AI changes that. So walk us through a little bit about how AI changes privacy and how we should all be thinking about that in our daily lives.
Oh, we've been so completely trained to think that privacy is about consent and control. Yeah. And to think that it's something that it's really just, as you say, what we offer up, what we volunteer. But if you take, there's some brilliant examples that really talk about the modern version of privacy in the world of AI. So, for example, Netflix will serve you up different artwork for movies depending on what Netflix infers your race to be. Now, Netflix doesn't know your race. You don't actually volunteer that information at all. Netflix figures out and infers your race from the data that you provide and the data that other people provide and other data that comes in. So now privacy, because of these inferences that come from AI, privacy is about the outputs. And so it's fascinating to watch this debate rage in Europe, where they're more advanced with the way they think about privacy in the age of AI. And now are these inferences about you, your personal information? Do you have a right to know what they are? And do you have a right for those inferences about you to be reasonable? And there's the total lack of accountability and a lack of discussion in the US about that. So we have some places where that's really obvious. It's you're able to access those, sort of discrete inferences. You can look up on Google what your ad preferences are and why you're getting certain ads, but it's still missing so much depth. It's still missing so much information about what, so for example, what bucket Facebook puts you in, and how who chooses, how you're targeted in those ads, and more than that, what you're not seeing because of your inferences. Are you missing out on a job interview to be served a job prospect because they think that you're not going to be interested because you're a woman, for example? There are demonstrable, provable cases of those things happening.
So when you're talking about the data that goes in and the inferences and perhaps recruiting, it makes you think of bias. That's got to be the number one topic in terms of ethics that most people think about in terms of AI. Despite the fact that it sort of gets discussed quite a lot, it feels like people still don't truly understand how bias gets into AI systems, how AI designers can actually try to manage the bias in the systems, and what the potential is for trying to remove it. How do you understand it? How do you remove it? How do you manage it?
Yeah, well, bias is a big topic, and it's been pretty well discussed in the media. And as you say, though, a lot of people still don't really quite understand how this bias comes in. And mostly the bias comes in because humans are biased. And so we get historical bias based on historical biases that have come from our human experience. And some of these biases are a good chunk of them are not part of a cultural sort of negativity. They're actually meaningful. They actually are about meaning. So one of the big studies came out in 2016 that made probably the biggest difference to the way that AI researchers were thinking about it, where they analyzed the internet corpus and the language and found that, flowers are more pleasant than bees. Well, that's true if you're a human.
Sure, because we like to smell the flowers and we don't want to get stung by the bees.
Exactly. So we have those sorts of biases. We have biases based on asymmetries in our language, that feminine pronouns have that they don't have a possessive pronoun. So according to Google, the world and everything in it are owned by men,
Yeah.
not by women.
Maybe
So-
pause for a second because I like that one. So basically the pronoun issue is if you're discussing ownership of something like a car, the car is, it is his car and the car is his. So there's a double whammy of the male, of the,
yeah, you
of the
see
masculine
his
pronoun.
twice.
But the car is hers or it is her car. Now, when we think about it and you hear those words, you think, well, I understand what that means. Like that's her and that's his. What's really strange and was only discovered recently through some
like late last year.
Yeah, through some academic research is that just that difference, his, her, hers, means that the possession, the understanding of possession is embedded in the language of everything in the English language. So when an AI looks at ownership, wasn't it the only thing that was considered was owned by a woman is mother?
His mother,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything else, the car, the house, the money, the everything else was considered owned by the male.
As per, that's what the AI thought.
Yeah.
So getting rid of bias, I mean, on one level you say, well, you can't really get rid of that, and some of it you don't want to. But then there's other bias that it's historical, but it comes from prejudice, and it comes from historical oppression, and we have to do our best to get rid of that. And there are now plenty of tools. There's a lot more awareness. There's a very famous study out of MIT by a woman called Joy Bawami called Gender Shades, where she analyzed facial recognition tools and image recognition software and was able to starkly point out that white men and the sort of graduation from a white man, well understood, well recognized, through to a black woman, not at all. Her face didn't even appear in facial recognition. That wasn't even recognized as a human face. So that work, people went back. Microsoft did a lot of work. Others, IBM did a lot of work to change their systems. But we're still missing enough diversity and the right participation in AI to correct these things, because it's still most of the work that's done is at the level of the technical tools, and the technical tools are able to debias and provide technical measures of fairness to a certain level, but in the end it's not just a technical decision and not just a technical discussion. We've got to create more mechanisms to get more people involved and more tools. So there's debiasing and fairness testing, which is sort of more technical. There's human-centered design, which is sort of our sweet spot. That's another major way of making AI more fair, less prejudice. And then there's legal and regulatory approaches, which are complex but fascinating. And then sort of societal and entrepreneurial approaches. There's plenty of entrepreneurs who are working on exactly this. And there's a huge amount of sort of grassroots societal democratic responses to things like whether or not our schools should have facial recognition in them. New York, they're saying, it hasn't really been tested much anywhere else, but obviously policing systems, whether we should have Ring doorbells with facial recognition. So this is a groundswell on that front.
Yeah, it's a couple of examples because I think it's helpful to make some tangible, to share some tangible examples of bias. Two that come to mind. One is voice recognition. So we have systems that are made by Apple, Google, Amazon that are trying to understand everyone and everybody's speech patterns. And but we do know that there are smaller groups with different accents or dialects. The example in our house is that our second oldest, who is also has a Kiwi accent and who is at the University of Oregon, go Ducks, she gets mocked by all of her housemates because the Google Assistant can't understand her. And you can when you have a system that's trying to understand 1 billion people around the world, when there's only 4 million people who have the particular kind of accent of a Kiwi, you can understand how that becomes biased. Even though you'd normally look at, someone like you, white heterosexual person, you'd think that that's maybe not sort of an issue of bias, but it is just because of that one thing in your voice. Yeah. The other one that's interesting is there was is in image recognition. And there was a system that was there's a system called ImageNet, and this is a grand database of images that got analyzed at Stanford initially. And
kind of the biggest database.
Yeah, the biggest data. And it's sort of the underlying architecture and training data for lots and lots of image recognition systems. We know that there was some sort of issue with how the system was set up and how the data was labeled. But it wasn't truly understood very well until Kate Crawford and I'm forgetting the other guys, Trevor Paglin, exposed it through a system called Excavating AI. And it would allow you to go take a picture of yourself and put it in and see how your face was labeled. And so I did it. And this is what the system saw. And it came back and told me that I was a creep and a weirdo. Those were the labels. And we were kind of stumped at what this was. I mean, our kids thought it was really funny. But what it turns out is that the ImageNet database, a lot of the labeling happened right after 9/11. And it was designed around sort of homeland security purposes. And so there was a lot of negativity expressed in the labeling of data with people with facial hair. And so because I have beard, the theory from someone who knows the system, the inside of the system much better than we do, his theory was that that's what it was coming from. Now that is sort of amusing when it's just a random system. It could potentially be quite a complex issue of bias when you have someone who can't be understood by a voice recognition system, or in my case could be described as a creep and a weirdo and excluded from access through some sort of facial recognition system.
So say you're trying to go to a high school.
Yeah, you can't get in. I like what you said though about entrepreneurs solving. There's one, I had a great interview on a podcast. By the way, people want to follow more of what we do. Helen writes a newsletter and I do a bit of the podcast component of it called Artificiality. You can find it on Substack. But I interviewed the head of AI research at Mosier, and he talked about the way that he's working on research of reducing bias through explainability and being able to bring in outsiders into the process. So it might be interesting to talk a little bit about explainability and the understanding of why it's so difficult to explain and understand what's inside of AI, and how to think about explainability from an ethical perspective.
Yeah, well, one of the big challenges of AI, and one of the things that we value the most about it, is its ability to find the non-intuitive. It has a totally different intelligence to human intelligence. So AI is astonishingly good at finding completely unintuitive patterns. Now, not necessarily causes, and that's an interesting part of it, but certainly correlations. And one of the best examples is also pretty recent, which makes it difficult to explain. It's challenging to explain it. And in order to explain something about AI, sometimes you actually have to expose someone's private information or know more about them than you should know to know how relevant that explanation is to them. So it's sort of this complex puzzle of how you can explain a bias, but you don't want to intrude on someone's privacy, but you need to be able to put it out there. And I think that it really was highlighted at the end of last year with the Apple Card, which you wrote a lot about. And because the Apple Card, it just didn't make sense. It countered to our intuition that a married couple could end up with such different credit scores. I think husbands were getting like 10 to 20x.
Yeah.
Wives when they applied for an Apple credit card. And that's just, one, it hadn't happened in the credit card industry before. Two, it was happening to people that weren't used to having that sort of thing happen to them. And three, no one could figure out why. So we sort of tried to unpick that a bit, and you sort of tried to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, the story was fascinating. And there's been this history of questions about bias in terms of credit scoring for a very long time. But so much of it has been in the mixture of data, and different people are different. So how can you actually compare apples to apples to understand whether anyone of any gender or race or ethnicity or anything else is getting treated differently from other people? What became so interesting in the Apple Card is that husbands and wives ended up getting very different credit limits. And it became really a bit of a firestorm because two very high-profile people started to make a lot of noise about it. David Hansen-Heinemann, who's the founder of Basecamp and Ruby on Rails and a very active Twitter guy, he's at DHH, went ballistic when his credit limit was 20x his wife's, despite the fact that they've been married for their entire professional careers, and they did everything financially exactly the same. So there was nothing different about which cards they had, which house they had. Everything was owned jointly. All their accounts are joint. And then the second one that came in was Steve Wozniak. So the co-founder of Apple came in and said, same problem with me. And it's actually, his wife, I think, he got 10x his wife's credit limit. And they do everything jointly. And on top of that, Woz's wife, Janet, does all of their travel reservations. So she's the one who's actually using the card all the time. And it was really confusing. We ended up discovering the big difference, we think, and this is a big discussion, and there's a lot of investigations going on in the New York
the
Financial
regulator's
Service.
still trying to figure it out.
But there's a key distinction in the Apple Card from anything else, which is the Apple Card, unlike an Amex or your normal Visa or anything else, where when you apply jointly, it goes in as a joint application. Because Apple is, the cards are identified with your unique Apple ID, you don't go in and apply as a couple, you go in and apply as two independent people. And so it's the first time we think that anyone's actually ever pulled these things apart, unless the two couples had separate finances previously. And it made for a real big problem. And we still don't truly understand what happened. We think it has to do with use of card, with the Woz example is a little bit funky. But if you think about it, that if you're in what would be a sort of a stereotypical relationship where you're going out to dinner or making travel plans and the husband's pulling out the credit card, that usage of the card, that sort of what would be traditionally thought of as chivalrous moment of I'll take care of this and sign the paperwork, is actually giving that person a higher credit limit. It has nothing to do with who earns the money or who does anything else.
He's showing his age now.
Exactly, but, I know, but that's where some of the history comes, right?
Well,
but then also the real problem.
That real lack of, there was no explanation and there was no justification.
Yeah.
No one stood up and took any accountability.
Yeah, Hansen, despite the fact that he's so public, he got no answers from Apple. They didn't have any justification for it. They couldn't explain why it happened. They had absolutely no rationale. All they did is they said, it's just the algorithm. We don't know. And that became very clear as a completely unacceptable answer, especially when the people that were making a huge stink out of it were highly technical and truly understood that it was unacceptable to say, we don't know, it's just the algorithm. Clearly what Apple needed to do, and Apple with Goldman Sachs combined, since Goldman was doing the credit scoring, they actually needed to be able to explain why the algorithm was giving certain answers. And they needed to justify why one person had a different answer than others.
And that step to justification is important. And this happens in so many different places. And and the worst places that it happens are actually in government systems and social systems, because part of what AI is there to do is to optimize and to reduce costs. So in a social or a government system, where will AI be put first? It'll be put on the quote unquote high cost groups of users, and those high cost groups of users are often the most complex and often the most disadvantaged, and so they end up bearing the brunt of this. And because a lot of government systems, especially state systems, it's now no longer a functional component of what that government or that city does. It's become the department, that part of the IT department. What ends up happening is there's this constant problem with the disconnect between the accountability for people serving people and it being a technical problem. And that's part of why AI ethics is so important, because this idea that bad technology should be fixed with more technology is very much this sort of the Silicon Valley mindset. It's a technology mindset. So what happens is that as we put more and more of our social systems and more and more of our human behavior systems and we make them subject to computation, what ends up happening is that we get this sort of techno-solutionism, and we get human values substantiated into AI systems in ways that people don't really sort of expect or understand. So it affects equality, which is another really big part of how we think about AI ethics is really understanding where the existing social seams that AI is going to run along those and make them, like, exacerbate them and make them bigger, but also when we're going to take new things that haven't been subject to computation and put human and actually start doing that. So one really good example, it's a bit of a thought experiment because no one's really done it yet, but it's a good one, is what happens when you put self-driving cars on the road. So right now, apart from emergency service vehicles and HOV lanes, the roads are first come, first served. It's very egalitarian. You get on the road, you get to go. And whereas when you put a self-driving car on the road, there's going to be so much commercial incentive to actually start scheduling that based on some other kind of value. So you run the thought experiment that says, if you're taking a kid to a soccer match and the roads are busy and you have to, quote unquote, compete to get on the road with a business person who's got an important international meeting, which one's going to get to drive?
Yeah.
And if there's no rules around that yet, but the commercial incentives, either if it's the car, if it's the self-driving car company that owns that system, which way that's going to go. So this issue of equality is vital. And then I think the final one that we think of a lot that's really important and sort of pulls from both privacy and philosophy at either ends of the spectrum is agency. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, for us, a lot of our focus and interest in AI comes back to agency and human agency and its interaction. As you said earlier, AI is role creating, which means it's not only it creates a role for itself, but in our interaction with it, it creates a new role for us. And one of the big challenges that we have with AI is that AI can do so many things for us. It has the ability at times to understand us better than we know ourselves. And it has the commercial incentive to take that understanding about ourselves and manipulate us into action. Because the commercial incentive is to get us to do things that will actually generate revenue for the companies that the AI works for, that it is a machine employee for. And as AI does that, and it either restricts the options given to us or persuades us to take action, what it does is it changes and reduces our choices. And the actual act of making choices is a core to the human condition. We are ourselves the accumulation of the choices that we've made throughout our lives. And so as AI changes that and affects it, it does degrade and change and remove our human agency. And this is one of the core focuses of everything that we do as we help AI designers figure out how to build great AI, is thinking about how to use AI to help humans, to enhance human agency, to help enhance human connection, not to remove it and degrade it.
Well, you can use, and there are definitely very dystopian sort of stories of that, and we definitely see that. We say that it's about the right to a future tense. There's also positive things. There's ways that AI can pick up what are called pre-commitment signals. So if you start going on Amazon and your treat foods, your unhealthy snacks, you start buying in smaller portion sizes, those algorithms can pick up, I don't know specifically Amazon, but there are definitely e-commerce sites that can pick up these pre-commitment signals. I want to eat healthier, I want to eat less unhealthy snacks, so I'm going to order smaller serving sizes. And then people use those to nudge you and remind you that your future self has a preference to be eating less unhealthy snacks. So that, you can actually do things that increase people's agency and you increase people's choices, but it takes careful design, because on the whole, bad design can definitely limit our agency and our choices, because we get lazy, and it's too convenient, it's too easy. So that's sort of those are our 7 things that matter in AI ethics.
Yes. All right, we'll hand it over and take questions.
Well, as you can imagine, the questions have been rolling in this entire time that you were talking. So I'm going to start with a question I find interesting as well. I know you work with a range of companies. And so out of all of the big companies that you work with, which is doing the most to eliminate bias from AI?
Ooh.
the most. I think the most aware are really all of the governments are definitely hyper aware. It is not even across tech companies by any stretch. The ones who have when we think about ethics, we describe it as the vessel that holds values. So the companies that are doing the most to reduce bias in their AI are actually the ones who are having the most skilled conversations about their values. So as a general answer, if you can look at a company and see that they're actually living their values, particularly in regard to how they're treating their customers and their more frontline employees, those are the companies that care the most about bias. And they're the ones who are withholding, I mean, some of these we can't really talk about like specifics, but one big media company doesn't do particular kinds of AI because they're really worried about bias and the impact on children.
They have a very big business in children, and so that's a big issue for them. And so their AI is very constrained because of that relationship.
Yeah.
When you think about big tech, we generally sort of describe it as you have to look at what the sort of the core focus of the company is and their sort of core reason for being. In general, Apple stands out despite the Apple Card problem. They actually are quite good at keeping data private, and they're quite good at, because they're not in the business of using your data to buy, to make you do things. Microsoft has a very deep history and research. They have a very strong ethics group. So they are actually quite a good example. But they both get away with selling products, selling hardware and software. The others, Amazon's pretty blatant. They just want to sell stuff. They actually don't really, there isn't really any sort of focus on a lot of these questions because it's purely just around commerce, but at least there you know what you're getting. So the relationship with Amazon is pretty clear. The relationship with people who are using their technology is a totally different category. And Google and Facebook are the ones that are actually the most in the crosshairs for these issues because they're actually using data to generate revenue for themselves. And so they're the ones who have the most, in some ways, the most complex relationship with ethics.
They do. Google's had a couple of incredible wins and epic fails.
Yeah.
But I think that there's such a strong awareness of the subject now that that there's definitely a sense of accountability for it.
Yeah.
And so are all companies across the board using AI? Is it like a pretty common practice at this point? Anyone in the business of selling anything is engaging?
To some degree, probably yes, but in some ways they may not know it. The easiest ones are people who are using some form of chatbot, or they're using some form of marketing and sales analytics. They're touching into Salesforce or using some sort of targeting system for their ads. Those are ones that are kind of easy. There's other back-end stuff around, especially any company that's involved in pretty complex logistics. They'll be using some form of learning system. I mean, the basic, we sort of skip through a whole bunch of the what is AI to us, but mostly when people talk about AI today, we've moved beyond just the pure analytics system and rules-based system that have been around for decades. And today, everybody mostly means machine learning systems. So systems that learn from new data and create new conclusions from it. At the same time, though, we think that most companies are using a little. Very few companies are actually truly investing in understanding the product and understanding the technology.
And what really matters is that a vast amount of the AI is driven by 5 companies.
Yeah.
So it's in the US. The big platforms that are essentially powered by AI, that's how they can actually do the business they do.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, so as you're experts in AI, does anything scare you?
Oh
yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, I'm really worried about where this surveillance goes to. Particularly this stitching up of all of these plug and play systems. So I saw today that Amazon threw a survey, so you can't really kind of take it too much, but that putting facial recognition and license plate reading onto the Ring doorbell system. Now, in a city like Bend, we're small enough that we could probably sort of figure out the democratic requirements around that. But in some of these other larger cities where crime is much more, like people are much more frightened, the whole thing just skews so paranoid. It doesn't show any real reduction in crime, certainly in package theft, but it makes people paranoid. It makes them behave differently. And that surveilled society requires, like, we really have to think carefully about what we're prepared to trade off. And without having good democratic processes to underpin that, it just becomes something that just gets stitched up behind the scenes and then appears one day and we just didn't even know there was a choice to be made. So I think that's scary. And the right to a future tense for young people bothers me a lot. I think you look at the way that we become aware of our own preferences, that process during adolescence and early adulthood is so dependent on the way that you see yourself in a mirror, that when you go to a social media platform that's powered so much by AI that just constantly puts this attention stuff in your face, it's really hard for people to actually develop a sense of who they even are. And so that identity formation that's happening at that age is so manipulated and so sort of guided by AI without us really understanding how or why or what the consequences are. So I think that future tense for all of us is critical, but really critical for, sort of that 15 to 25-year-old.
I'm especially worried about the ability for AI to exacerbate inequality. If you look at the big five companies, which are the largest and the wealthiest companies in the world, are the ones that who own all the AI. They're the ones who they employ the vast majority of the top end data scientists. They have all the data. They also have the ability as large companies, but also as wealthy individuals, to control what the objectives of the AI systems are, to define what efficiency means to an AI system. So to really control that outcome. And then even behind the scenes, even a little further, we've come to understand that AI systems are much more accurate and therefore benefit the powerful more than the less powerful. Some great research, a woman named Chelsea Barbas, who Helen wrote about and I've also interviewed, who's looked at the effect of AI systems in the criminal justice system and how it benefits judges more than the accused. If you look at just the raw data of the internet, it generally represents first world countries that have been online and where there's a lot of data, and there's 1 billion people who aren't online and they are not represented at all, and so therefore the AI system can't learn from them or help them. And so I feel like that's a real that's a very worrisome thing, especially now as we're going through this crisis today, which is disproportionately hitting people. The disease may attack anyone, but the economic effect is definitely not equal. And you can see how an AI system would just exacerbate that without really careful design on the front end.
Yeah, and another one to leverage off that is very much how, AI is there to optimize, and it won't do fair if you don't tell it to do fair, and it won't do resilience if you don't tell it to do resilience. And because everything's been so focused on optimize, we've lost a lot of that human ability to understand what it means to build in contingency. So, you look at it, I don't know how we're going to deal with self-driving cars when no one knows how to drive anymore. And that's kind of what our supply chains look like right now. We've lost that. Like, there are certain professions that truly understand what it means to keep a bit of fat in the system, and what that means in a digital age. And I think AI means that we're losing that skill. So we've got to build that contingency skill back up again. And when we work with talent development people, that's always something that people go, yeah, hadn't thought of that. And that's a really important skill to bear in mind. It's sort of like, how do you put wisdom in really early?
I appreciate that. So is there an industry governing group? Is there someone laying out what the standards are, what the protocol should be, guidelines?
It's a good question. It's there's a lot of people in the space. So, we've got the World Economic Forum puts their views out. OECD has theirs. Brookings Institute, IEEE have actually just published a big kind of list of it. To my mind, a lot of this is sort of overwhelming. So we spend a lot of time trying to distill it into ways that people can actually use. I think if you look at it from a regulatory perspective, the vast majority of regulators just are so far behind. I mean, they just do not understand. So it's a messy space right now. I mean, one of our senators is pretty active in this and understands it well. But, that makes Oregon actually pretty different.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So let's shift gears just a little bit. What is the key takeaway for startups?
There's changed so much in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway is understanding your niche and your ability to use AI, and being. This is definitely one where the big 5 platforms will get into any market and squash any company that they feel like.
Or buy them, depending on.
Or buy them, yeah. So there's sort of 2 different angles. There's been quite a lot of success of people who are coming out of PhD programs. They pull together 5 friends, they create some interesting stuff, and then they just have a nice acqui-hire. We'll see if that continues, but that's been a good outcome.
And the golden rule there has been do one thing really well.
Yeah. But that's true for companies that are not just pure data science, which is you have to be extra careful about where the AI platforms are embedded and where they see the market opportunity you're going after as a strategic opportunity. In some ways, it's not really different than I would give to startup advice 5 or 10 years ago. But right now, it's actually the big 5 are even more looming competition than they've ever been.
Well, I just thank you so much. I mean, it's such a fascinating topic. I know we just barely scratched the surface, but I also want to say thanks to your kids for sharing the internet with us. I know that the bandwidth in your home is like a hot commodity, so we appreciate it.
We do have one attending an Oregon seminar at a class right now. She's on a 5-hour class upstairs.
Well, you weren't interrupted, so apparently it held. And then I guess one last question. Is that a wall that is a whiteboard behind you?
Yes. It is. You're actually in our home office. So this is home and this is office, and that's the whiteboard wall.
Where all the magic's done.
It works really well.
Yeah, it's great.
I promise I was paying attention, but at one point I was like, there's a light switch on that whiteboard. So just awesome. You guys are just full of all kinds of good stuff. So it is an EdCo tradition to send you home, even though you're already home. I'm gonna send you this giant Pub Talk mug. We'll get it out to you. You'll bring it to any future Pub Talk, and we'll fill it for free. And I guess we'll have to give you like 2 straws, or maybe just like a sidecar or something, so you can each have your own. But I really just appreciate you both so much. It's great to have you. Thank you for all of your information. I have a feeling that it's going to be rippling for our audience for quite a while. So thanks for what you're doing. Keep it up, and we look forward to following along with what you're doing.
Look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yeah.
You got it. Have a great night. All right, my friends, for upcoming EdCo events, I will direct you to keep an eye on the EdCo info events page on our website. Some may be postponed, some may be transitioning to live stream on the interwebs. And as for Pub Talk, we will soldier on virtually until they let us back in. And I guess by let us back in, it's really let us back out. Thank you all for clicking in tonight to show your support. Thank you for your efforts to keep our community safe. Remember to take extra good care of yourselves and each other, and keep your perspective. This is a miraculous time, and just about anything is possible. I think that tonight's program shows us that, if nothing else. So thank you again for having me. I'm Shannon Kelly. It's a delight to be here with you. See you all soon.